Okay, I think I'm just going to quickly start here since it is already 6:01. But thank you all for making it here today. And I want to very quickly hand this over, briefly introduce Janice Yee. She is our design coach and mentor, and she has a wonderful presentation set out for us. So take it away, Janice.
Hi, everyone. Let me just start my share. Okay, just want to do a quick check. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. Well, today we're going to talk about job interviews for designers. And before I do that, a little bit about me. I am a design coach. I do offer my services to help designers with anything to do with design education or anything to do with your career. I have been a designer since 2005. I graduated in graphic design. And since then, I've been a product designer, a UI designer, UX designer, UX and product design instructor, and accessibility specialist. And right now I'm moving into the realm of career development with my postgrad as well. So I have gone through the process of career change. I'm not sure how many of you are also undergoing that as well, but that's something that I can definitely help coach you with should you need that service. So I know this session was advertised as a Get Hired strategy. I just wanted to note about the interview process in the context of job search. A lot of people think that having the best resume is what will get you the job. That, in fact, is a myth. The resume is what will get you the interview. The interview is where you have the opportunity to show them that you're worth hiring, and that's where you can you have the power to talk to hiring managers about your value. So what to expect in an interview? There are common stages to interviews, such as screening, behavioral interviews, and skills-based interviews. These are common no matter what industry you're in. The few things that are specific to design is having the design challenge and potentially presenting your work or case study. I've also had the opportunity to go through, at one point, a 6-stage interview where which also involved a role play challenge and a chat with a senior design mentor as well. So all of that culminates in a decision stage. And we'll talk through each of the types of questions that you may encounter throughout the process as well. So a few of the personas of hiring managers that you may encounter through the process. Typically, the first time a company will reach out to you is usually either a recruiter or an HR person. And mind you, you may encounter all of these personas, or you may encounter one person who is a combination of a whole bunch of these personas. It all depends on the size and type of company that you're applying to. So it could be a startup who has one person who fills all of these roles. So that could be an entrepreneur, or it could be a large company who have separate departments. So in terms of the needs for each of these personas, So the recruiter or HR person is the one um, who will be checking to make sure that you are a designer and you do in fact have the experience that's relevant that can help the company. Um, Something that I have heard from other recruiters is that some really high statistics, I think it might be 60%, don't quote me, but it's a pretty high statistic that there are people who are not relevant at all to the role who are to applying for the same role as you. So they're there to screen out all those folks who are not designers. Sometimes they can be gardeners or architects or other people just in other roles that are not relevant at all. Um, so they are the first point of contact typically. Uh, if you pass the screening stage, you may encounter your future manager who is there to see if you'll be able to connect and work well together. So there was a product owner that I've met before, and she always describes the interview process as trying to see if it's a person that she can have an artisanal beer with, right? Someone that is easy to work with and will fit on the team. You'll possibly encounter the future colleague who is there particularly as the person who can assess your hard skills. So it could be another designer, it could be a developer on the team, just someone who's a little closer to the project who will be able to understand a lot of that tech or design lingo. Another stage could be to encounter the executive. This is sometimes the most intimidating stage to be a part of, but they're just there to assess if you are a culture fit, and they're just curious to meet you in general. By the time you make it here, you're generally, for the most part, you're in the clear, and they just want to get to know you, or you could be one of the top 2 or 3 candidates that they're trying to decide between. One strategy that is very helpful for designers is to use the design process or your understanding of the design process to your benefit as part of your job search journey. So you can consider the hiring manager as your user. As you see, I'm using design process terms throughout this presentation. So here you'll see that if you just in your mind, just shift your mind to think of a hiring manager as your user who has needs. So in this case, the hiring manager has a gap on their team. They want to fill it as soon as possible. They don't want to spend any more time than necessary. They just want to know that you are the right person and that they're done with this whole hiring process and they can get on to the real work. So as much as you can describe how you can fill their needs, the better it is for you. So we'll also talk about factors for success before, during, and after the interview. So before the interview, make sure that you are researching the company and you're reviewing the job posting. The last thing that you want to do is ask them any questions about the role or anything that's published or that's easily found online. That shows them that, if you haven't done your research, then that shows your lack of interest or lack of understanding of what they do. And your hiring manager will just be like, well, why are you here if you didn't do your research? So it's always best to know what you're getting into before you go in. Definitely preparing and practicing your presentation and pitch. So depending on the stage that you're in, do practice. and anticipate any questions that they may have. You can also prepare stories for behavioral questions, and yeah, like all these questions we'll go through as well in detail. Do plan your attire based on the company's perceived formality. So sometimes, especially within financial institutions, they are very they can be very formal. Personally, every interview that I've gone to, this is just based on my own philosophy, but every interview that I've gone to, I've always worn jeans. I'm not into the whole power suit thing. That's not my vibe, but that's something that has worked for me based on my values. But do your research about the place that you're going to before you start your interview. And prepare your references. If that's something that you know they will ask for, or potentially you can also prepare them after they ask you. This is not a typical thing that that has been requested. Sometimes it's if it's a recruiter, then they may ask for references. And especially now with the pandemic, virtual interviews are a very common thing. So do test your technology. Make sure that Windows isn't just updating last minute on your computer just before the session, or prepare for any backups in case there's issues. And practice makes perfect. Definitely, as much as it sucks or is very challenging to do, record yourself if you can, just because that's when you can review your responses and see how you do and how you convey yourself. There are some tools that you can use online to practice your interviews. LinkedIn has a service called Interview Prep. You can just go to it by clicking on jobs and then selecting Interview Prep. Here you can record a video of yourself responding to questions, or you can write a response to each question, and it uses AI to analyze your response based on the number of words that you've spoken or how many filler words. It'll count all of that, and it'll give you a review. During the interview, assess your level of it's to assess your level of knowledge and interest in the company. So do take some time. This is where that research will be really helpful. It's okay to take time before you respond to questions. You don't have to respond right away. You can compose yourself and then start speaking. You can provide clear, tailored responses that address company needs. So definitely speaking to anything that is important to that company. So like, for example, if it is in finance, anything that was in the news or about the labor market within finance, like that'd be really important to bring up. It just shows your interest. Making sure that you develop rapport. So this is important just as part of ensuring that they remember you. So do recall that as a hiring manager, they may end up seeing very many people, and so it's hard to keep track of the different candidates. So you want to make sure that you are remembered during your interview. And on video, do exaggerate your personality. This is a little bit can be challenging for some people, but certainly, and especially on video compared to in person, you do need to be exaggerating your facial expressions, your posture, everything, just to convey yourself on video. And do ask about their interest in your profile. This is a very key nugget of information that you can use to your benefit in all future interviews. You never know what it is that brought them to you, or that made them pick up the phone. It could be a resume, or it could be a little illustration in your portfolio. But this is your opportunity to find out what really drew their interest. So some of the common questions that you may see, definitely tell us about yourself. That's across the board. Why should we hire you? That is the whole reason that you are interviewing, is to influence and convince others that you do have value and you can provide and fill the needs for their team. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why do you want to work for us? How would past colleagues describe you? So these are all questions that you should prepare for. Industry questions. So these are questions that are very specific to design and tech. So make sure that you're prepared for these as well. What does design mean to you? What is your design process? How do you work with other designers? How do you work cross-functionally in the team? So those team questions, it depends on the size and scale and nature of the company that you're applying to, but it's just to find out how you work with other people. What inspires you? Where do you go for inspiration? What tools do you use? How do you handle feedback and change? How do you grow? Where would you like to be? These are typical industry questions, and you can respond to these just the same way that you would with behavioral questions. But it's important to have a response prepared for each one. So behavioral questions, these are typically really challenging for most people. So this would be those questions that start with, tell me about a time when something didn't go as planned, or describe an example where you went above and beyond. So you can respond to that using the STAR method, where, and this is a very common response as well, but it helps you provide all the information in a very clear and succinct way. So situation, where you're describing the context of what it was, or what the scenario is, who was involved, when was this, which company was this at, what were you expected to do, which is task. Action, which is what were the things that you actually did, what did you perform, and then results, what was the outcome of your actions, how did you turn around a bad situation. So for example, example of where I went above and beyond was a time when I was, sorry, my throat's getting really dry. So describe time when I went above and beyond. So this was when I was working, it was back in 2014, I was working as a product designer, and I was asked to do an accessibility audit for the first time. And I did not know anything about accessibility. So I was able to ramp up by learning about it online, doing my research, trying to talk to people if possible, and just gain as much knowledge as possible about accessibility. And the actions that we took were to develop an audit document, version 1, to start, just so we had something, and then adjust it as we go. So the result was that I was able to perform that audit. I was able to ramp up really quickly. I was able to perform that audit and adequately communicate any changes to the developers. So that was how I navigated a challenge and how I was able to get through to the results. and went above and beyond to do that. That wasn't part of the job description. That was just a project that came up due to ministry requirements for accessibility. So questions for the interviewer. So again, this is where your research, I want to emphasize that the importance of research so that you're asking things that can't easily be found online or somewhere else. Things like, what does a typical day look like? What are the challenges that you're having on the team? What is the first project or activity that is expected? Asking about feedback is actually a really good opportunity to ask about feedback. And especially with pandemic, you can ask about how the organization has adapted to the pandemic. So whether or not the role is completely remote, is it remote forever, or is it remote until it's safe to come back in? Do they have an office in case that's something that you need? So those are the things that the types of information that you'd want to get. Something that is a bit of a risky question. Is there anything that you've seen or heard here today that would jeopardize my candidacy? I have used this a few times, but only in interviews where by the end I get the sense that I've got it, I've nailed it. So this is just to double check, and you can also preface this by describing that you have a growth mindset and you're really open to feedback, and you're really looking to continue improving. So that's part of forming that positive impression. But it is a very risky question, so it is up to you whether or not you want to use it. After the interview, typically you should send your thank you email within 24 hours. I have sent thank you emails just because of the magic of mobile phones. I have sent my emails within an hour of departing from the office or from the interview. So within 24 hours, otherwise they're not going to remember you. They're going to be seeing maybe like a few other candidates within the day, and that's it. So this is your opportunity to also include any memorable moments from the interview. I'll tell you a story that there was one interview that I attended where the fire alarm went off in the middle of it. Yeah, and the person that was interviewing me, she was 7 months pregnant at the time. And we were on the 23rd floor of a building, and luckily it was just a drill, so we were able to carry on. But definitely afterwards, in my thank you email, I mentioned the fire alarm, and that hopefully next time we meet, that it will be in better circumstances. And definitely this is your opportunity to ask for feedback. So you may get a response, you may not, and no matter what, you can ask for feedback. Do note that companies are not obligated to provide feedback, but you can definitely ask. You can reflect on your interview and what you can improve on. So taking tips every time that you encounter an interview, just like in user research, you adjust as you go for the next time, and make notes on any technical issues that you have so you can prepare for them. So just to kickstart the discussion, I'm going to stop my share. I know this presentation was really quick and breezed by really fast. Just want to hear from you what your key takeaways are.
Janice, I really enjoyed your presentation and so many questions, and there's been chat going on, and people are really appreciating your presentation. I have one very quick question, and I'm not sure if I don't think you addressed this, but is it a good idea to ask the interviewer what the next steps are, or
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that presumes that you will be going on to the next step, but it's for your information so that you know what their process is. So, especially in the first step, in the first call, at any point in the call or even afterwards, after this screening, you can ask about the process and ask about next steps. They may say that you'll receive an email or they'll describe the whole thing, that it might be 7-step process to get hired, or it could be like one more stage and then that's it. So yeah, absolutely. Ask as much as you can about the interview process, about who is part of the team, who you're meeting. These are questions that are really important even for your information so that you know what's happening. Just because like otherwise, like after this, there's always that chance that you may not hear from them.
right?
Again,
Yeah,
that happens often.
yeah, the ghosting that happens from the recruiters sometimes, right? Right. Anybody else has any questions? You can put it in the chat or unmute, or let me know if you want me to unmute because we have about 6 odd minutes left on this Zoom call. So Janice, there was one question that was pre-submitted. I don't know if we've addressed that. Um, I think it was a question more to do with a company that doesn't have designers, and if they're interviewing you as a for a designer role, do you sort of ask the question about what their processes are, or do you not go there because they probably, they just dealt with developers versus designers?
Um, you can probably gauge that based on how much design knowledge they have. If they don't have if they've never had a designer at all, that's why they're hiring you, right?
Yeah.
But what you can also ask to act that out a little bit is to inquire about how they see the design role fitting in the development process. So what this does is it helps to give you an understanding of what their knowledge is of design and what their what their thoughts are about where you could fit.
Got it.
So it's also an opportunity for you to educate them too. So instead of just asking that question, depending on what they say, if it's clear that they just don't understand about design, use that as an opportunity to educate them and teach them and show them that you are the professional that can help them.
Sounds like a great tip.
I hope that answers your question.
That answers my question for sure. I'm just trying to see in the chat. I have a couple of questions here, Janice. There's one that says, how do you determine whether the company you're interviewing at would be a good place to be a designer? Is it from...
barring that hindsight is 2020 at a lot of places. So it really depends on what you need. So really reflect on yourself as a designer and see, are you ready for a challenge? Are you ready to be just thrown in the ocean and figuring things out and potentially taking the lead and growing a design team of your own within that company? Or are you the type of person who needs mentorship and the support of a larger design team? So really, it's a question for yourself to see what your needs are, whether that's growth, whether that's leadership opportunity, whether that's the um, ability to develop and grow something on your own at a startup, whether that's to wear multiple hats if you really enjoy design and code or design in other roles. That's really up to you to decide and to look for a company that fits those needs.
That's a great answer. I have one, I think this might be the last one. But how is the best way, this is from Adam, how's the best way to continue the interview if you've stumbled on a question?
It's okay to so what I like to do is really verbalize what's happening in my mind. I do that proactively on purpose so that there aren't any um, like stops and starts. So let's say if you started describing or telling your story, started responding to a question, and you feel it's not going well, then you can simply just ask to restart, or just say, hey, this is, can we return to this question later when I'm more composed? That's okay too. As long as you're able to respond and and verbalize what's happening or what's in your mind, then like that's really important.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, Janice, we have a few seconds left. Um, so we will just probably get disconnected. So before that happens, I want to take this opportunity to really thank you. This was a wonderful presentation, and I hope people have had some questions answered. And feel free to connect with Janice. Like she said, she's a great person to speak to. She has so much experience being a design coach in the design industry as well. So, yeah, thank you everybody for being here today.